Hello, grade 10. We're on chapter 4. Welcome back to school. We're just looking quickly at chapter 4. You'll see that we've done this section with all the different mathematical operators, basic ones, and div and mod, which I explained. And if you want to revise, you can go and look at this particular page here about the div and mod. It's explained over there, like I explained to you, and those activities that we did. And it's all this exercise we're going to do now is all about using the mathematical operators in a program, and we're going to do activity 4.7.1 today. And remember, when we work with numbers as well, we need to display them, so we have to convert them to strings so they can be viewed on the form. And we have the float to string and int to string. But then if you want to format a floating point number, remember that's a real number or decimal point number, then we have the float to string f function, which is described here, where you have your real number for the first thing in brackets, and then the format you want to use, which will be either FF currency or FF fixed. And then they have this thing called precision. It's just the number of digits altogether that you want, and then the last parameter is how many decimal points you want to display. In other words, that's a way of rounding as well. So we'll get to it and do more practice. Over here we have examples of what will be displayed. If you use a float to string f, go and study those. And remember, FF fixed and FF currency are the two options that you have. FF fixed just means that you formatting the string and it won't have any currency symbol in front of it. Alright, so let's do 4.7.1, and this is about a formula to calculate the gradient. And what is the gradient of a line? It's basically the slope, how steep it is in either descending or ascending line. What is the angle of the slope? And they're given 2 points in a line, A and B. You probably learn about this in maths. So we're going to open the gradient project, write a program to determine the x and the y coordinates for point A and B. So we're going to put in numbers over here, x1 and the x coordinates and the y coordinates of a line. 2 points on a line for points A and B, and then we're going to calculate the gradient using that formula over there. So we're going to use our little BODMAS, etc. So they say use the object inspector to set the minimum and maximum value of each spin edit. So these are spin edits over here. We've got to make the minimum and maximum as -10 and 10. So that's easy. We go to our program, click on the spin edit, go to the left hand side, opposite over here, object inspector, max value 10 -10. It has already been set. So each spin edit, click on the spin edit, go down to the object inspector, you'll see the max and the min value has already been set for us. There they are. So they have limits on the numbers you can choose here, and in here we're going to determine the gradient. So the first thing we're going to do is get our inputs, which are these 4 numbers. So that would be x1 and x2, y1 and y2. And where are we going to put them in? Well, we've got to declare variables. Before I go any further, I just want to make my the size of the font in this program so that you can view it better on your screens. You go to tools and options, and it's taking a while. Edit options and then display. Over here you change the size of the font to whatever you want it to be. I'll make it 20, and I think you can see better now. Okay? Right, so now we're going to get our x and our y coordinates. 2 x's and 2 y's. It means I have to have 4 variables, and this is where we put our variables. Remember, just before begin you type var, and ix1, ix2, iy1 and iy2. Those are integers. And then if you look at the calculation, the output is going to be a real number. Why? Because there's division involved. So you have to set your answer, we call it m, let's call it m, to a real variable. So rm colon real. So we have 4 integers, 1 real variable, and now we're going to go and get our input. If my computer will start typing. So ix1 will be equal to, I'm going to call it spin x spn x1, spn x1 dot value, and ix2 equals, I'm imagining spn x2 dot value. Remember, dot value is our spin edit property that we use to get our input. Y1 spn y1 dot value. I'm just guessing the names, I'm sure that's right. And by the way, if you ever have to do this a lot of times, you can copy and paste and just change the numbers. You see there's a nice pattern there. Right, now we've got to calculate rm. So this is input, okay? Now this is processing. Rm equals, and what was it? You take y minus y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So I'm going to use brackets because I like iy2 minus iy1 divided by ix2 minus ix1, and that will be our answer. But they say calculate and display the gradient of the line correct to 1 decimal place. Fine, so we're doing that. We've calculated, but we're going to round it to 1 decimal place in our display. And the display is going to go where? So that is the input, this is the processing, and now we have the output, and that's going to go where? We have to find out where we're displaying, and we're displaying inside this label called LVL gradient. Now LVL gradient has really got something in its caption. Okay, that's the caption property, gradient, sitting there. We're going to add to that caption, we're going to add our answer. So we'll say LVL gradient dot caption equals the previous LVL gradient dot caption, join that to, that plus means a join. Now we're going to join that to another string, a couple of strings actually, just making this bigger so you can see, and I'll put this on a separate line so you can see. Join that to this string here equals, and then we join it to another string which is going to be our rm, but we can't just go and put rm in there, we have to float to string it, float to string. And we're not just going to float to string, we're going to float to string f, in other words f for format, rm, and then in brackets we'll have ff fixed, comma, now we can choose how many digits we want altogether. I'll make it 8. That's including the decimal points. It's giving you a maximum of 8 spaces, and then 1 decimal point, and there is the answer. So I'll run the program and choose some numbers. Any random numbers. Don't know what I'm doing here, but just going to choose some random numbers and probably says that is 2.0. If I change the numbers up, still minus 5.0. So if the gradient is negative, as you can see, if I keep clicking on the button, you can see what's happening is joining to the string all the time. So I actually don't really want that to happen. So I'm going to say, let's not just do that. Let's rather just say gradient equals. So we can go and click it a lot of times. Okay, so I'm not joining this string over here to the previous caption. I'm just going to type in gradient equals, end of story. Right, you get the idea. So it's rounding it to 1 decimal point. Okay, that's that done. Now we're going to do the next activity. Not saving any changes. Now, of course, you have to open Delphi. Well, I have to open Delphi again. And then we're going to do 4.7.2. Now 4.7.2 is all about a diving competition. 3 judges score a participant. The final score is calculated by determining the average of the 3 scores, ignoring the decimal part. That will be interesting. So we're going to do that. Let's go and open our activity from the data folder. And it is called scoring underscore scoring project scoring. There it is. Okay, now in this case we have edit boxes to get scores, and the final score is the button where we're going to do the calculation. Now the input here in this case is all going to be in edit boxes, or slightly different to spin edits. Remember, we've got to take all those 3, calculate the average of the 3, and then display and ignore the decimal part. Right, double click final score. Now the edit boxes, you know, we can assume that they're going to put numbers in there, and we can assume that they will put integers in those edit boxes. VAR, R score 1, R score 2, R score 3. And then we have an average, R average, variable. So we get our variables out, declare them so that we know what we're going to be using. That's for the input, and that is for the calculation and displaying the output. Right, so let's go and get the first one. EDT score 1 and EDT score 2 and so on. So I'm going to say R score 1 equals, now we can't just say EDT score 1 dot text. Remember, it's dot text. You can't say that. Why? Because that is an integer on the left hand side, and over here is a string. It's like you're saying something equals to something else, and it's a false statement. It's not valid. You can't make statements that are invalid. So you can't have an integer on the left hand side and a string on the right hand side. You have to convert one of them, and I'm going to convert this string on the right hand side to an integer to match the integer data type on the left hand side. Always watch out for that. So how do I take a string to an integer? I say str to int, open brackets, and put our string in the brackets, and there it is. So we're going to do that for the other 2 scores as well. Look at me, I'm copying and pasting, and all I have to do now is change the numbers. R score 2 and R score 3, and we're done. That's the input. Now the processing. So our average will equal, we can add up R score 1 plus R score 2 plus R score 3, and we divide it by 3. Now why did we use a real number to show the average? To calculate the average, sorry. We use a real number because we are dividing. Whenever you see you're going to have division involved, you have to use a real number to hold the answer. Right, so that is the processing. This is the input, getting all the stuff from the edit boxes. And this is the calculation, which is the processing. And now for displaying, that is the output. Where are we going to display? It's the same, LBL final score. Same as the last activity, we have a label with a caption in it already. LBL final score dot caption equals final score. Join that to a string. Oops. Final score equals. Got to make us have our spaces right. And in here we want to get R average, but we can't just go and put R average there because the caption property is a string, and on the right hand side we have to have only strings. We want to join this string here to another string, but R average has to be converted, so we use float to string. R average has to be converted to a string, but they say ignore the decimal, so I'm going to round to a decimal point using my float to string f. R average, comma, ff fixed, comma, let's make it, well, how many, I suppose we could make it 8, and comma, naught. That 8 is number of digits altogether, including a decimal point, and a naught means it's going to be rounded to a whole number. So there will be no decimal points displayed. And there you have a string joined with a plus sign to another string that has been formatted nicely, because it's a number that we have formatted in that way. Alright, so let's go and put some numbers in. Just put a random number in there. Average is 6. 18. What's 18 divided by 3? 3 6s are okay. Let's make a more complex number. So if we have 9 for that one, where final score is 8. And if this one is 4, so as you can see, it's different each time we put a different number in. Okay, that's that for today. Now you must try and do this by yourself, and if you've done it by yourself, then you can try and do 4.7.3 by yourself as well. See you on the next lesson.